I'm Andrea Klim, and you are watching Turn to the Stars. I want to say thanks for tuning in today. Today is Tuesday, January 12th, 2016, and the topics on Turn to the Stars this week are going to be about Mercury's Retrograde, which is the first of 2016. And we're also going to be talking about Jupiter's retrograde, which just started, and which is a 5.5-month journey for all of us. That is the influence of that energy. And then we're going to also talk about the era parallel to this month, with this new moon that just began last week on January 9th. And in final, I'm kind of sort of going to give you a glimpse of the month of January. Talk about the Leo full moon that occurs on Saturday, January 23rd. And I do want to, because of the parallel to the time that Thomas Jefferson was the president, I wanted to talk about or sort of dedicate today's show to a friend of mine, Jeff Close, who's the writer, inventor, creator of Intrepid Astrology software, which is the software that I use in all the creation of all the astrology charts I do. And because a long time ago, Jeff, who's become a dear friend of mine, was on Turn to the Stars, and he was talking in detail about Thomas Jefferson. And in planning today's show, I thought about Jeff, so I do want to dedicate today's show to Jeff. And I also want to wish him that all his dreams come true this year. He's far away out west, and I know he has a dream to move back to New England, so I do want to dedicate today's show to him. And so if you look in the archives on my website, turntothestars.com, under television and scroll down, you'll see that show that Jeff talked in depth about Thomas Jefferson and how that time period parallels the time we're living in right now, and this month, especially January. Because, you know, Thomas Jefferson was one of our founding fathers, and he was an American lawyer and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. And I do also want to, talk about that, the significance of astrology and how important it has been and still is in the guidance of our country. Thomas Jefferson and many of the members that were involved in writing the Declaration of Independence referred to astrology and looked to the stars for answers and guidance. So very important. What you see behind me is actually the front of our solar system, and it's what humankind learned to look at in order to create a birth chart. If you were to sort of swing that around a little bit, of course the sun is at the center of our solar system and all the planets orbit around it. However, if you were to swing that around, you would see the exact replica of what an astrology chart looks like. And an astrology chart can be created based on the birth of anything. The birth of a human, the birth of a pet, the birth of a question. So it is an incredible guide to all of humanity and all of beings. And so the first thing I want to talk about today is Mercury's retrograde. And I do have an image which I'd like to put on the screen. And that image is of Mercury's retrograde and the first of 2016, which really began on January 5th. That was the time when Mercury appeared to go backwards by perception in our solar system, and it lasts through till January 25th of 2016. And truly, this is a time of rescheduling, reflection, reconsidering things, repairing things, rethinking things, revisiting things, reviewing things, recommunicating things, reconnecting, reappearing, things reappearing that had maybe disappeared. It truly is a time where we get answers to questions, especially right around the time of, let's see here, the midpoint or the turning point is right around January 14th. And I'm all set with that picture of Mercury and its retrograde. But I want to talk about the significance of Mercury retrograde and the turning point. Turning point is when the Sun and Mercury appear to be side by side in our solar system, meaning at the same degrees and the same constellation. And that occurs on January 14th when Mercury is at 23 degrees of Capricorn. And that's just a couple days away because today is the 12th of January. So we've been in this retro type of movement with our thoughts and our ideas. And I mean, we've been experiencing those delays, reconsidering things that maybe we hadn't considered before. So Mercury's retrograde truly is a time where it's a gift of knowledge that is given to us. It's a time where we can, really get the opportunity to revise things. And so basically there's more than one step to this journey because it is perception, and it is a time where our minds are given the food to look at things in a different way. So the 14th is a very important date because it's a time where we go, aha, I get why it was important for me to revisit that particular thought process or that particular structure or that particular goal that I had my mind set on. And I do want to point out some important dates with Mercury because since December, Mercury has made 3 connections with Pluto in Capricorn, December 19th, the 22nd, and the 29th. And it made 3 squares to Uranus, December 20th, January 20th, and January 31st. And so you're probably saying to yourself, what does this mean? And so to explain that, I would say that it is revealing to us where we are being inspired to be more honest with ourselves as well as others in areas where we should or could be more open to new ideas and ways of doing things. We started out with Mercury in Aquarius. It goes back into Capricorn. So it is really very revealing of these places where we need to be more honest with ourselves. And the other thing is also is that, Mercury retrograde just really does give us a time to rethink, retool, and release whatever structures are no longer serving or working or are not in alignment with our highest good. Especially this one being the first of the year, the new year, it does give us that idea of what is the best way to work with the thought processes or the ideas that we have. And so it lasts until January 25th, but I would give it another at least 5 days past January 25th to completely, sort of calm the energy to calm, because whenever Mercury is what we call stationing, meaning turning retrograde or going direct, it's kind of a bumpy ride. So by January 25th, it does go direct. However, give it at least 3 to 5 days before you put into motion the ideas or the thoughts or the plans that you have for forward movement. The other thing I said in the beginning, one of the topics I wanted to talk about was Jupiter's retrograde, which actually started last week on January 7th in the constellation of Virgo, and it's going to stay in that constellation until May 9th. So Jupiter in Virgo is an interesting expansion of understanding the very minute details around our work, around our health, around our ability to disseminate or just sort of look deeper into things, break them down, analyze them, and see where they fit, especially in the area of work and how we serve the world. So we're really going deeper into that investigation or research in that area. And it's going to be a time between January 7th and May 9th to complete unfinished business in your exploration of what's healthy and eliminate what's holding you back. And Virgo can be sort of a cold sign because of the earthly component. It really is mostly focused on the facts and mostly focused on how to perfect those facts. So it can feel like it stings sometimes, but it also can be what is servicing us the best, serving us the best. It will bring that to our minds, into our thoughts, and into our lives. So one of the things I thought would be kind of neat to do is to write down a bucket list. And bucket lists are really brought to light by Jupiter and Virgo. And also, the other thing that is bringing the bucket list is making a list of things that you want to make sure that you do in your lifetime. They are important things. They're important things that speak to your heart, important things that keep you healthy, important things that keep you on a path. At least it gives you hope of what the future might hold for you. So write down that. It's important to do that. Build a life of no regret. So at the end of your life, or whenever it comes close to that time, you can say, I have no regrets. And January 8th actually really brought that to light when Saturn joined up with Venus in the constellation of Sagittarius. So it really was inspiring us to make sure that we work with the things that give us a forward projection. That energy did advise us to choose wisely so that we won't feel sorry later on. Saturn is interesting because it's sometimes called the Grim Reaper or the Revealer of Reality. So in order to work best with Saturn as it moves to the constellation of Sagittarius, and because of that conjoining with Venus, it would be really helpful to kind of set your sights beyond where they are right now. And it always helps to write things down or make a vision board. Keeps it in your mind's eye what you're heading toward. And there's 5 things that people often will say that they regret. And I did some investigation into this in preparation for today's show. One of them is they wish they'd lived a truer life to themselves. Number 2, they wish they'd not worked so hard and took time to smell the roses. They wish they took time to express their feelings more. They wish they'd stayed in touch with their friends more, enjoyed their company, spent time with them. They wish they'd not let themselves, I should say it this way, they let themselves take avenues that brought smiles to their face. They wish they had done that more rather than followed avenues that were heavier, or maybe stayed stuck in avenues that didn't promote those smiles and those happy times. So I want to now, once I get past that, I want to talk about the new moon that brought a theme of new beginnings to us last week, which was on Saturday, January 9th. And if you could put that chart up on the screen for me, John, there we go. And you could see the bottom part of the chart highlighted in purple, which is probably right around 5 o'clock if you were to look at a clock on the wall. And that new moon was in the constellation of Capricorn with Pluto right next to it. And it sort of painted a picture that everything we do makes a difference to others, even when it's not visible to others. And that was a kind of an interesting concept looking at this new moon, because where this new moon is actually occurring is in this area of family, of home, and the structure of that. And are we, there's so many people that are going through such incredible transitions with family, with their home life, with their children, with the way those structures look. What are the rules? How can we change things to make them work better? How can we teach our families in ways that are helpful to them, that will support their life rather than hinder their life? So it's interesting because as probably for the last 6 months, I keep getting these songs in my head, and I call it this music that's coming from the cosmos. And there's one that it's sort of like, like messages or music that I hear, and it kind of inspires me to go look that song up, and they're usually really happy songs. And so what I want to say to you is in this sort of painting this picture of this theme of what's to come is to take time to reevaluate your priorities and your goals. That's really what the theme of this new beginning, of this new moon is. Take time to reevaluate where you're going, what you want to build, how that looks to you. And as I was saying in the beginning of the show, this new moon does parallel a time which was back in September of 1804 on the historical timeline, which was the world age of industrial and national revolutions, capitalism, mechanistic materialism, Reformation. And if we're using the Gregorian calendar, which is January through December, 1804 was a leap year, just like this year. In January of 1804, Haiti gained independence from France and became the first black republic, having the only successful slave revolt ever. And also in 1804, topics such as humanitarianism, archaeology, architecture, art, literature, music, they were all really focus points. So this new moon, parallel with that time, does sort of show us that we're building a new path forward. And guess what? Guess who was the president at that time, 1804? Thomas Jefferson. And as I said earlier, he was strongly guided by astrology and knew a lot about astrology himself. And one of the interesting things that I discovered in studying this theme for this new moon was that Pico Iyer, who was an Aquarian born on February 11th of 1957, he was a British essayist, novelist of Indian origin, and he was the author of numerous books. He said, "Remember that sometimes making a living and making a life point us in opposite directions." And that's a very, very interesting concept, because in today's world, we're so driven by the dollar, by the material sides of life. But remember that sometimes making a living and making a life point us in opposite directions. So where's our center point? Where's our balance there? Capricorn energy does can be extremely focused on, climbing that status, that staircase that brings us to status, but very, very important that we realize that balance or that balancing point. And then I also want to talk to you about the time that is we are really en route to. So every day, as this theme of transforming structures comes into our lives, and this profound change of direction for so many is so evident in some way. Every night you look up in the sky and you see the moon getting a little brighter, a little brighter, a little fuller. And by this Saturday, January 23rd, it is going to be full in the constellation of Leo. And I have a chart. I'm going to put that on the screen right now. And there it is. The top left corner, which is highlighted in yellow, shows the full moon at 3 degrees in the constellation of Leo. And this full moon in Leo reminds us of the imminent power that each one of us has to make a difference, and also how we can each create this difference. This full light of Leo demands our attention in a powerful way, reminding us of power that comes by connecting with others, and the positive growth and movement of transfiguration, which is possible. It's interesting because we can see with this full moon, it's actually in this area of the chart which tells us that there's a lot of light around community, around the masses of people, and where their hearts are and what they hope to create together. That is a really interesting part of this full moon. And I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit for people to understand what we're going to become more aware of as this week continues to evolve. First off, I want to say the sign of Leo is really significant of the special individuals that we are. It really helps us. Leo is that energy that inspires us to express our hearts, to express who we are, to express our special talents, to express that special piece that we each carry within us. And this full moon, if we look at that chart again, I'm going to put that chart back up on the screen. The Leo full moon chart shows that, John, can we put the chart for the full moon back? There we go. If you look at the full moon over there in the top left, which is probably about 10 o'clock, and you took your finger and you drew it on that line that has the square in the middle of it down to Mars, you would see that this full moon is squaring Mars and Mars is squaring the sun, because we always have the sun and the moon opposite each other on a full moon. And with the sun in Aquarius, which is the sign of humanity, and both of these, these luminaries squaring Mars, we naturally have a sense here that we as a whole are headed in a profound different direction. We have no choice. We have no choice but to take this action. We have no choice but to be actively engaged in some powerful and intense and emotional transformation, and that we should talk about the details of what this feels like to each of us. It is promising us that there's a profound change of direction for humanity. A profound transformation or transfiguration is upon us. And what you're seeing in that chart is also that you see Mercury over to the right side squaring Uranus along with Pluto. So, there's many people that are in these thought processes of their ideas or their thought of what they or where they might be going through changes. So it is a very powerful time to be alive on Earth, because we are all going through incredible changes in our directions. And, it is really a precursor that and an indication that the age of Aquarius, meaning humanity, is evolving and becoming more attuned to more unified patterns of conscious connecting. We're realizing how important it is through this full moon, especially for us to bond with people of like minds, to bond with people who are supportive and will connect with us rather than pull us apart. So as the full moon in Leo comes in this week, it's going to be inspiring each of us to do our part to develop our individual gifts, our individual talents and abilities. And it also is inspiring a movement of restoring grace, restoring justice, and beauty to our world. So I just have 3 questions that, as I get close to the end of today's show, that I would ask you to consider as January 23rd approaches, which is this full moon. Number 1, what is your grandest desire? Mars in Scorpio talks about our desires and our activities that are focused on achieving those desires. If you could change just one thing in the world, what would it be? Who would you join up with? Who do you trust? Who do you feel and know that shares your visions and dreams for making a difference in our world? Who is it that you trust? That's very, very important. And also with this full moon, it is, in that T-square, that fixed T-square, it does bring a sort of a heaviness emotionally to all of us. So we will have to do things that are very positive to stay inspired. And just remember that this full moon does paint a picture of our individual human nature, which is to impress others with our talents and skills. But it also, by configuration, brings a picture of the healing power associated with harmonizing with other like minds, with other like spirits. So I just want to point out one more thing as we get to the very close of the show. Very, very important. This full moon shows us a reflection of the side of us that has been victimized. Tendencies which are toward being in that kind of victimhood. So it kind of brings to light questions like where we feel helpless or hopeless, unable to display our creativity, or those areas. So anyway, I want to just say thank you to everyone who watches Turn to the Stars, and I do want to wish you a very happy new year, a very happy 2016, and until next show, I want to inspire you to turn to the stars to find your answers and take good care, and I'll see you next time.